So today we're looking at F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. It's from 1925, and particularly we're looking at narrative point of view and characters. The picture isn't actually from the film, I just really liked it. So let's look at Nick, our first person narrator. He's both an insider and observer, and he says, "I am one of the few honest people I have ever known." Big call, Nick. Can you back it? Fitzgerald removes Nick from the deepest action and sets him on the edge to watch it all unfold beyond his reach, preserving the ambiguity that would define the novel. His use of imagery is rich and layered, but he does not often critically examine it. Through the novel, he is a critique of the roaring 20s and their excesses and carelessness that carried on all around him. He's connected to the upper class, but is aspiring to gain wealth through trading for himself. He has social currency, though, through birth and education, as he's able to access the upper classes. Remember, he's related to Daisy. Now, he frames himself as a victim to whom things happen, but there are suggestions that he's an unreliable narrator and not as honest as he presents himself. For example, he starts romancing Jordan while committed to a woman back home. Nick is the implied author of the story, and the story serves his interests. His social success could be seen as an endorsement of capitalism, even while the text is critical of its excesses. Through his observations, Fitzgerald's suspicion of the first wave of feminism's influence on women is emphasised. He has a tendency to notice women's hair and clothes when characterising them, signs they projected previous generations' criteria of passive beauty. And how does Nick see Gatsby? Because remember, it's through Nick we see Gatsby. "They're a rotten crowd," I shout across the lawn. "You're worth the whole damn bunch put together." Gatsby is created through his connection to his symbolic elements like his car, house and clothing, and these are the things that work to demonstrate his social class, or the one he aspires to belong to. He sees attaining Daisy as his wife as another demonstration of success, as the fact others have desired her increased her value. This use of descriptive language connected to currency in value demonstrates a narrative distaste for the gauche decadence of the 1920s by Fitzgerald through his proxy, the observer Nick. People are stock. Nick has sympathy for Gatsby, not only because he validates his perception of success, but because Nick, and so the audience, recognises how empty success is when people, relationships and loves are reduced to commodities. This framing of the characters as objects dehumanises them and invites a reading that is critical of the economic excesses of the 20s, suggesting it as a causal relationship with society's lack of moral integrity. Gatsby's destruction suggests the social mobility experienced by new money is an illusion, a lie, and so the novel can be interpreted as challenging the premise of the American dream, and that those who work hard and ascend through enterprise have the ability to become part of the upper classes in America. But don't forget, this is being seen through Nick. Nick, who has bought stocks. Perhaps he's the one who sees people as currency. Something to consider. And the same way you can look at Tom, the old money. Now, Tom's definitely one of life's great villains. They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together and let other people clean up the mess they had made. He's a former footballer player and a Yale graduate who marries Daisy Buchanan. He's the oldest son of an extremely wealthy and successful old money family, and he has a veneer of gentlemanly manners that barely veils a self-centered, sexist, racist, violent man. His privilege, though, is inherited, and he can afford to be submissive of the new money's acquisition of social standing through ostentatious success, because he doesn't need it. Notice that Nick's assessment of Tom is not being able to differentiate between animals, people and things. Structurally, this is emphasised by the long wandering sentence and repetition of variations on careless. Yet why does Nick want to succeed in business? Why is he there? There is some hypocrisy here. Nick's narration also hints at an awareness that the privilege Tom experiences as a result of his class has corrupted him, which in itself acknowledges that a society that gives power creates an imbalance that will exploit While Tom and other members of the old money upper class benefit from the aspirations of those who work for him, thinking they succeed through hard work, they don't sincerely welcome those who achieve financial success into their social group. For example, Tom decides to destroy Gatsby. So it's old money versus new money. Class versus the social mobility promised to those who work hard in the American dream. And don't forget, Tom wins. But I love the character Myrtle as seen through Nick's eyes. And he doesn't love her. She is judged very strongly. And if you want to sort of do a feminist reading of this text, challenging it, she's the one. Mrs. Wilson had changed her costume some time before and was now attired in an elaborate afternoon dress of coffee-coloured chiffon, which gave out a continual rustle as she swept around the room. With the influence of the dress, her personality had also undergone a change. The intense vitality which had been so remarkable in the garage was converted into an impressive hauteur. Myrtle is an extremely interesting character from the reader's contemporary post-feminist perspective, as the narration appears actively hostile to her desire to ascend from the lower classes, unlike the sympathy extended to the male Gatsby. Like all the women that Nick observes, her rejection of the passivity and obedience required by pre-first wave women is constructed as being complicit in her destruction. She is characterised really harshly by Nick as having used her body as a commodity to exchange in an attempt to escape her extreme poverty. The symbolism of her breasts being torn from her body in the accident where she thinks she's flagging down Tom for help to escape her husband, but it is Daisy driving, is both heartbreaking and a little judgmental. The narration clearly sees this as tragic in a literary sense, with the character's ending being a consequence of the bad decisions, but indicates a textual bias against women. Like Gatsby, she's poor, but unlike him, she has no opportunity culturally to work for economic success. As a woman in patriarchy, she had only her body, a body that text chooses to mutilate in closing her character's arc. Remember that Nick, Fitzgerald's surrogate, chooses this framing of her arc. The women of Great Gatsby are all cruel, careless, or untrustworthy. All cut their hair, symbolically rejecting traditional representations of femininity, drink and fornicate. This is not a narrative perspective that celebrates the loosening of societal roles for women during the first wave of feminism in Western society. Instead, it suggests they've been corrupted. A really good essay to read on this is in the 2019 Good Answers. There's one on Gatsby that really goes into that feminist reading. But also some things I would suggest that any student wanting to look up this text go and look at is Schoolwork Helper. I got some really good fundamentals about Gatsby and the first person narrator from there. Of course, Lit Charts is always a great website to go look at any literature text. Spark Notes, of course, they're really good for themes and issues and symbolism. But there was a wonderful little YouTube clip called Nick is Not Your Friend, which I highly, highly recommend. It looks at the film and it looks at the novel, but it raises some very interesting points.